These men are using hallucinogenic drugs to put themselves in a state of ecstasy, to travel to the edges of the universe. There they traffic with their spirits, the Hekura. Our children play house or cops and robbers. Their children learn how to be shamans, using wood ashes instead of real drugs. Neighboring groups come to dance and feast, for in times of war, all villages need allies. Many of these aggressive displays are symbolic, but some are in deadly earnest. These are the Yanomama Indians of Venezuela, a remote tribe that makes its living by cultivating, hunting, and gathering. From our perspective, other cultures sometimes appear to be exotic and incomprehensible at first glance. It is the task of anthropology to discover through fieldwork how other cultures operate. Anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon, professor of anthropology at Northwestern University, has done fieldwork among the Yanomama since 1964, building an impressive understanding of these people. His field techniques are the standard tools of anthropology.
The basic data of anthropology comes from fieldwork. You can't learn about another culture simply by reading a government document or a research report or books in a library. You must go and live in another society for a long period of time and to a certain extent participate in that society. This participation is a unique dimension of anthropology that no other science has. Participant observation. The anthropologist must go, immerse himself or herself in another culture for long periods of time and try to understand the inside view of another culture, how it ticks, how kinship, marriage, family, descent, social organization, how they operate, what are their problems. Now, fieldwork can be very difficult. It can be challenging, but it's also exciting and very rewarding. When I first went to live with the Yanomama, I worried about things like, would they accept me? Would they like me? Would they be truthful? Would I be accepted in their society? Would they cooperate with me and give me the information that I went there to collect? I worried about this constantly, even as I sat in my canoe, going into the Orinoco for the first time in 1964. I worried about it right up to the point that I walked into the village.
My fieldwork took me deep into unexplored jungle, where I visited some 60 villages. I canoed to some and walked to others, but did not travel much at first until I learned their language. Each group wanted me to remain with them and not go further. They wanted a monopoly on my trade goods. They would try to frighten me by tales of treachery or fabulous river monsters that would devour me and my canoe. Some of the dangers were real, others imaginary. I survived all of them over the course of a dozen field trips. I had to visit many villages to build a complete ethnographic understanding of the Yanomama. In each case, I came as a Yanomama visitor is expected to come. Enter the clearing, parade to the center, hold my weapons erect, and strike a ritual pose while the hosts greeted and inspected me. They could not pronounce my name, Chagnon or Chagnon. It sounded to them like their name for a pesky bee, and that is what they decided to call me. To the Yanomama, I am the man called Bee. As an anthropologist, I am also a visitor, but I must recline as they do, with poise and dignity, unconcerned and confident. They inspect my decorations and speculate about the purpose of my visit. I went to this village every year to update my census and genealogical data. They fed me as they would feed any guest. I didn't expect to see my old friend, Nanokawa, here. He and his group broke away from the village several years earlier because of fights over women. On this occasion, he was here on an extended visit. Generosity and reciprocity are always important in all cultures. In fact, the only way you can be sent to the Yanomama version of hell is to be stingy during your lifetime. Each item given must always be repaid. I learned and abided by these rules. One reason the Yanomama accepted me was because I brought them useful trade goods, such as machetes and knives. If I didn't bring them gifts, they would not cooperate or give me information. But I could not simply give things away, for those who received nothing would resent me and be reminded of my stinginess. Thus, I traded with them. I was concerned about my own impact on their culture and tried to limit the number and kinds of goods I brought. Enough to get my work done and remain on good terms with them, but not too much. Key informants always play important roles in field research. This is Dedahewa, one of my best friends and informants. He is a shaman of great renown. He has 16 children by several wives and is an important influence in the village. Dedahewa is also one of the most knowledgeable men I have met in any culture. He encouraged me to learn the details of his religion and cosmology. Dedahewa taught me about ancient wars and village moves. He taught me about the Hekwita spirits, their magical songs, and their supernatural power to cause or cure sickness. Shamans take drugs and become Hekwita. They eat the souls of enemies and lick the body fat of their victims from their fingers to purify themselves. Anthropologists often have trouble explaining why they've come to do field work. The Yanomama thought it natural for me to be curious about them, for it was obvious to them that I was not quite human. I was more human and more acceptable in their eyes if I took their drugs with them from time to time. Anthropologists have known for many years that kinship is the basis of social organization in all tribal societies. I had to collect accurate genealogies on everyone for 4 or 5 generations in depth. Yanomama social organization is based on kinship ties, marriages between kin groups, and descent from ancestors. People would often move from one village to another. I had to update my census on each return visit. Villages would split into 2 parts. People would move by choice to be with other kin, but sometimes they moved for other reasons. What are you going to tell him about? This is her daughter, and raiders from Iwahika stole her daughter, and that's why she's crying. I'm on town. This was always tedious and difficult work because they had a taboo against using the true names of close kin or dead ancestors. In addition, many people had several true names and would be known in different villages by just one of these names. At first, they tricked me by inventing false names and fantastic relationships. I had to throw away most of the data I collected during my first year of fieldwork. I eventually solved this problem by using Polaroid photographs. I carried the photos to other villages where people there would give me the correct names and the names of their dead ancestors. I returned each year and brought with me my updated computer printouts containing this data and would add new information or resolve the inconsistencies. Anthropologists study the use of living space and how social groups and individuals divide it up and utilize it. I mapped their villages with a compass and measuring tape. This revealed how social organization was tied to living space. People do not live randomly, but near certain kinsmen. Men must avoid their mothers-in-law and cannot even go near their houses, even when they are not at home. I photographed each section of the village as a guide to my later drawings of the village. Genealogy showed that brothers tend to live together in one section of the village, along with their wives and children. Anthropologists call this kind of group a lineage segment. They are bound to each other by marriage exchanges. I record the location of everyone in my village diagrams. If I forget someone's name, I ask a helper to whisper it into my ear, which embarrasses them. Yanomama villages grow, divide, or fission, and move into new lands. Once I discovered this important process, I devoted much of my work to documenting and explaining it. I learned from this that they were going through a miniature agricultural revolution and a population explosion. Each village was just a temporary interlude in the larger dynamic process and a part of a cluster of interrelated villages. Dedehewa lived in many of the villages shown here, but presently lives in the one called Mishimishimabui Teddy. Documenting village fissioning required the collection of many kinds of data. I made long lists of old garden sites by finding out where each person was born, where they were first married, and if dead, where they died. For women, I collected the name of the garden where they had their first menses. They described village locations by reference to things like mountains, streams, and waterfalls.
Hey, where did you cut it? Shabano kair. Shabano kair. Hey, mama, he bui kashabano. Mama, he bui kashabano. Yeah. I know that she had to walk. Okay, Shaki border is 40 degrees west of north from the Shabano, and it's the waterfalls that they named after me. We're on Shayarewa border.
The economic and ecological dimensions of this process are also important. I collected data on land use, garden size, where they hunted, where they gathered wild foods, and why they returned periodically to old abandoned gardens. They went back to harvest peach palm fruits. Accurate maps did not exist during much of my field work. I had to make my own. I put on them the abandoned gardens, current villages, and the important rivers, waterfalls, and mountains. I used a compass, and I estimated walking distances to these places from all the villages I visited. I updated my notebooks on cultural geography each year.
Number 3, side 119.
It is important for anthropologists to study myths, for they embody much of the worldview of a people and often explain man's relationship to nature. The Yanomama take great pleasure in telling myths and try to outdo each other by being more poetic or using a clever metaphor. They have to do this within precise limits, for the myths have specific elements that must be stated in a conventional way. Thus, myths might vary somewhat from one village to another, but the core of the myth remains inflexible over very large areas.
Wadi bana yana mama no pata bana ko waka to wa.
Me waka no shak umabon. Ko?
Ano shi umabon. Wadi no.
You are the ko waka shi.
Wadi ha.
Leha was making a scaffold high in the tree when Naro snuck up and shot a charm at him. Leha shrieked as the charm passed through the skin of his throat. It did not kill him. Leha was near a fallen abia tree. Leha was chopping wood from the fallen tree. Naro blew a charm at him as he chopped. It struck Leha. It nicked his throat. When he struck the cord with his machete, it separated, and Sloth was flung violently through the air. He was flipped high and far away. Lele Bao was one of my closest friends and best informants. He developed a method to teach me the language by breaking each phrase into words and the words into syllables. He took great risks when he guided me into remote villages that were sometimes hostile to his. I owe this man a great deal. I was racing against time during my field work, for I knew that even the remote villages like this one would soon be exposed to the harm and danger that comes with increased contact with the outside world. They never know when someone is going to raid them, and they must be constantly on the alert for suspicious signs. Raiders paint their faces and bodies black with charcoal. They line up at dawn and then leave to attack their enemies. Sometimes they must travel for 4 or 5 days to reach them. They strike at dawn and retreat, hoping to evade detection. I discovered that 30% of adult male deaths is due to warfare here. Their conflict and cooperation make sense in terms of their general principles of right and wrong. People must take sides in fights. It is right to defend kinsmen. It is wrong to escalate fights if they can be resolved with minimum force. The study of socialization and enculturation is of great concern to anthropologists. How children learn their culture and their sex roles. Among the Yanomama, little boys pound chests and intimidate little girls. Playing war is not an idle game in their culture, nor is it in our own. Political leaders like Mu'awa have to know about the strengths and weaknesses of neighbors and if they acquired shotguns. Some leaders are tranquil but strong when they must be. Others are constantly aggressive and pushy. Mu'awa bullied and intimidated his followers chronically. He was feared and disliked by many. He also threatened me chronically, and it was difficult to live in his village. He almost killed me once with his axe because I gave a machete to a man he did not like. I convinced him to lay down his axe by promising to bring him many valuable gifts on my next visit. It is not always possible for the field worker to get along well with all the people all of the time. Dedehewa was a charming, friendly, and very warm person. He went out of his way to help me. If I were sick, he would try to cure me as he would the members of his own family. If he were sick, I tried to cure him with my medicines. Neither of us believed in the efficacy of the other's techniques, but we indicated our mutual respect and friendship in this and other ways. We called each other Shorty-One, brother-in-law, a warm and affectionate kinship tie to the Yanomama. It meant that we could marry each other's sisters. His were old and ugly, even by his admission, but he was certain that mine were young and beautiful. All field workers have to shed the prejudices and cultural filters they acquired in their own society in order to achieve an objective picture of another people. Fortunately, I was able to collect scientific data while at the same time make intimate friends with people like Lelebawa and Dedehewa. They asked me to tell my wife to send them a gourd of my ashes should I die in my own jungle, far from their villages. They would drink them in their plantain soup and mourn for me as they would for their own kinsmen and friends. In the end, they admitted that I had almost become a true human being, a true Yanomama. Dedehewa took great pride in making sure I learned things correctly, such as calling the Hekwita spirits to me. As he often told me, he was a good teacher, for he possessed the truth.
It was very satisfying to be accepted by people like Dedehewa, to become part of their village, to be called brother or brother-in-law. Men like Dedehewa exist in all cultures. And one of the obligations and responsibilities of anthropologists is to communicate the very important concept of cultural relativism, of understanding that all cultures everywhere have made unique, workable solutions to many of the kinds of problems that we all face, problems of being hungry and solving that problem, of curing our sick, of getting along with other people. This, I think, is an important message that anthropology carries. Just as Dedehewa was interested in and anxious to have me learn about his culture, in a sense, anthropology is like Dedehewa, because, in fact, anthropologists must in their teaching and in their writings, bring this important message of cultural relativism to people other than just students, to people in the world at large, so that they can better understand and appreciate the value, integrity, and beauty that exists in all cultures.
Information on a special illustrated viewer's guide for this series follows program credits.